You ever think about how one tiny decision can just change everything? Well, today we're diving into a true story from back in 1974. It's about a journey that started with a simple bicycle and ended up somewhere nobody could have predicted.
And that's really all it took. That one thought kicked off this massive cross-country adventure, a huge test of will, and a discovery that would alter the course of a life. But our story doesn't start out there on the open road. Nope, it begins in a place of, well, feeling completely and utterly stuck.
So picture this. It's 1974, Minneapolis. And for our guy, life feels like a song that's just stuck on repeat. He had this promising music career, even got a song published way back in '69, but now it had just totally fizzled out. All that momentum was gone, and life had become predictable. Maybe a little too predictable. You know how things can look one way on the surface, but feel totally different on the inside? That was exactly what was going on here. From the outside, it looked like quiet comfort, but really, deep down, it was quiet disappointment. That predictable routine wasn't satisfying. It was just stagnation. And then a single word came along and changed the whole tune.
California. That's it. A bandmate just casually mentions he's moving out there, and that word, California, just kind of hangs in the air, like a dare. And what started as somebody else's plan quickly turned into this personal challenge. He decided, that's it, I'm going. He was going to chase a new adventure, and he was going to get there on a bicycle.
So this wasn't just a move, This was a leap, a completely wild idea to leave everything familiar behind and pedal thousands of miles toward a future he couldn't even imagine. He even convinced a good friend, Jim, to come along for this absolutely audacious ride. And this quote just nails the feeling, doesn't it? It was one of those things that your brain tells you is illogical, maybe even a little crazy, but your gut just knows it's the right thing to do. It felt like destiny. So, with that feeling, they set themselves a pretty ambitious goal. 100 miles every single day. Now, for two pretty experienced cyclists, it sounded tough, for sure, but doable. So they set out for Minneapolis, just full of grit and determination, ready to chase that horizon. But, of course, the road had other plans. Yeah, that romantic picture of the open road, it pretty quickly smashed into some very harsh realities. Their big adventure was about to become a serious test of endurance, of their friendship, and of their ability to just make things up as they went. So Nebraska didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. Instead, it hit them with this brutal, biting cold. The freezing temperatures just turned every single mile into this grueling fight against their own bodies, with muscles stiffening and joints just aching. Then, in a small town, a local baseball coach gives them this stuff called red-hot liniment. For our narrator, it was like a miracle. It kept his ligaments from totally locking up. But for his friend Jim, the cold had just done too much damage. He had to stop writing. And just like that, the whole trip was about to fall apart. So what do? They came up with this completely bonkers plan. Our narrator would bike the 100 miles. Meanwhile, Jim would try to hitchhike the same 100 miles. And they just hope to find each other in the next town. You gotta remember, this is 1974. No cell phones, no GPS. This was pure blind faith. And somehow, for 3 days, it actually worked. But as they got closer to the Rockies, they knew this plan wasn't gonna hold. So practicality finally won. They found a used Pontiac station wagon and bought it. This was their new mobile base camp. The pure human-powered journey was officially over, but the adventure, it was still very much alive. In fact, the most intense part was just around the corner. See, way back in Minneapolis, a friend had planted this idea in his head. Hey, if you ever get the chance, you have to ride your bike down Rabbit Ears Pass. And now, standing at the very top of that pass in Colorado, looking down, he knew he had to do it. And we're not talking about a gentle slope here. This is a 2,400-foot drop at a steep 7% grade. On paper, those are just numbers. In real life, it's a plunge, a sheer dive into speed and adrenaline. The second he starts down, the world just becomes a blur. The first thing he notices is the sound. The wind is absolutely roaring past his ears as he picks up speed instantly. Then comes the feeling. The entire frame of his Fuji bike starts to vibrate violently, the metal itself just groaning under the stress as he's flying down this mountain. But here's the real danger. He can't brake too hard. See, back then, his tires were literally glued onto the rims. If he brakes too much, the friction heats up the rims, melts the glue, and a tire could just blow off at incredible speed. He was basically trusting his life to a thin layer of adhesive. Can you imagine the feeling of reaching the bottom? Just pure relief and a massive adrenaline dump. His arms and legs were shaking like crazy, but he'd done it. He faced the mountain, and he was still alive to talk about it. The physical peak of the journey was over, but the real reason for the ride was just about to show itself. So, he makes it, he gets to Los Angeles, meets up with his songwriting partner. He thinks, okay, I'm here, this is it. He thought the whole point was to chase his music career, but destiny, as it tends to do, had a pretty big surprise waiting for him. It turns out that the destination he had biked and fought and scraped for thousands of miles to reach wasn't the one he was actually meant to find. A few months after he got there, an old classmate from high school introduced him to someone, and that one introduction changed everything. I mean, just look at this contrast. He set out chasing a music career, trying to write a new song, but what did he actually find? He found a woman named Christine, who just 2 years later will become his wife. He didn't find a new song, he found a new family, a whole new future. And that's really the heart of it all. Every single mile, every challenge, every bit of doubt and uncertainty, it wasn't leading him to a record deal. It was leading him to the exact doorway where his real future was waiting. You know, this whole incredible story started with just a feeling of being stuck and a single decision to take a risk on a totally unknown road. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it, for all of us, standing on the edge of our own decisions, what small leap could change your everything?